Hey everybody, welcome today. We are so excited to have Nicole Gary with us to help us all learn a little bit about networking with high worth clients. And I know many of you have been introduced to Nicole before. She's a real high flyer at our sister firm, Keller Williams in Manhattan. And Nicole is a high producer there who holds the record for holding one of the highest apartment sales ever in the Time Warner building, and I believe ever in the city. Is that correct?
Not in the whole city, just in that line. That particular
Okay,
building.
awesome. That's big real estate. So
Yeah.
anyway, thank you so much. Can't thank you enough for sharing with us today, and excited to hear what you have to say.
All right. Well, thank you so much for having me back again. You
It's a
guys,
pleasure.
I'm happy to be here. So hello, everybody. For those of you who don't know me, Nicole Gary from Manhattan, New York. I run a top team out of our Tribeca office, and we work all over Manhattan. We sell condos, co-ops, townhouses, and also sell in parts of Brooklyn. So I'm here today to talk to you a little bit about how to network with high net worth individuals and how to win the luxury listing. So one of the things that I remember from my first luxury listing that I really got, which was at the time a $6.5 million listing. I remember being really scared. It was my first year in real estate. And I thought to myself, oh my God, I don't know if I could do this. And I went to my mentor who sold a ton of luxury apartments. And I said to her, I might need you to help me with this. And she said to me, Nicole, you don't need help. She said, you are great. She goes, just think of it as selling a $500,000 apartment. It's the same thing. She said, but you have the relationship. They're going to love you. You know a lot more about any of these apartments than most agents do, because I came from a background being in custom window treatment. So for many years prior to real estate, I worked for a family business and I sold motorized blinds and draperies. So high-end custom window treatments, and my clients were architects and designers and the top 1% wealthiest in Manhattan. So from that, I learned a lot about the industry. And I'm here to share that with you all today. So one of the best lessons that she taught me was, there's really no difference. However, there are so many different things that you do need to know when you get into luxury. You need to understand people's mindsets, and you need to understand what something called a family office is. So for those of you who don't know, a lot of high net worth individuals have something called a family office, which is almost like their own investment banker in-house. So somebody who manages their properties, their assets, everything that they have. A lot of high net worth individuals own multiple properties. So they need somebody to manage those and make sure that they're making the correct investments. But because they have so much wealth and they've acquired so much wealth, they need to make sure that one person is working for them and is managing all of their assets correctly. So there's certain terminology, which is great to know, such as what is a family office? And also understanding that that could be one person or it could be multiple people. And these are some of the things that you learn when you get into dealing with high net worth individuals. Most of them will have some sort of assistant or have somebody who works for them, and you need to know who their gatekeeper is, because a lot of them don't want to deal with the minutia. They want to just deal with the important details, and they want you to go to their gatekeeper prior to actually getting them the most important information. So going back to that one listing where my mentor said, go ahead, you can do this. She goes, if you need my help, I'm there to help you. But I know that you can do this on your own. So I remember doing all my research, and my client had called me, and they were meeting me on a Saturday because the apartment they owned in Manhattan was a pied-à-terre. And this was actually a second property they owned in that building, which was an investment property. And they decided it was just time to move on, and they were going to put those assets into another class. So I knew enough about this client because I had a prior relationship with them to know where they were on the dispersonality spectrum and to know exactly how to handle them. This particular client was somebody who actually loved to talk. They love to talk, and something a smart person once told me is, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason, so listen. So I sat with him for almost 2 hours on a Saturday in my office. And the first thing I did was talk to him for a couple of minutes. How is he? How's the family? I got right down into it. And I said, here are the numbers. Here's where I think your apartment's going to sell. Here are the comps. There's been nothing in this line that's sold in X amount of years. And here's where we should list it. I didn't say much more than that. For the next hour, he talked and talked and talked. And at the end of the meeting, he said, great meeting. I'm going to sign this listing. One thing he did say to me was another broker at another firm actually said it was worth $2 million less. So if you can get that number, great. And he signed it, and that was great. That was probably one of the easiest listing presentations I've ever had, not realizing, that this was going to be so simple, but also really understanding who he was and understanding his personality. Now, how do you network with these high net worth individuals, and how do you actually, where do you find them? Where do you meet them? These are questions that people ask all the time. There's so many different ways. Personally, I just happen to meet people everywhere I am. I network. I have a lot of great relationships with financial advisors, with mortgage brokers who have made introductions. I meet people at restaurants, at bars, on vacation. So I think of everybody that I meet as a potential prospect, but a lot of them are also friends. So one thing that I can tell you is be real. Just because somebody has a ton of money in the bank doesn't necessarily mean that they're any different than you are. So a lot of my very close friends are very high net worth individuals, and they're no different from me. They just probably have more money in the bank than I do. So that's one thing that you have to realize, they're all people too. But I find a great way to meet them is going to high-end restaurants or hotels and hotel lobby bars. When I first got into the business, being in New York and living in New York, there were a few great restaurant bars that I would go to, and some hotel bars that I would go to. And I met a lot of international investors that way. And it's as simple as kind of just sitting there and doing a little work or making a conversation with somebody there. Sometimes it takes even talking to a bartender and understanding who everybody is in this scenario. But the most important thing I can really teach is be real. And some of the things that you really need to understand are, you need to understand their language. So what do I say when you understanding their language? So I mentioned before, actually knowing what a family office is. That's extremely important. If you don't know, they're really going to be like, wait, what level are you on? Understanding brands. So understanding luxury brands when it comes to hotel brands. So what is this, Ritz-Carlton versus the Four Seasons, and why are they different, and where are they located? So really understanding kind of the way that they'll travel is important as well. Understanding the boating world. A lot of them have their own boats, or they charter their yachts for the summer, and understanding the difference in different boats or different captains, and knowing, different size boats. Understanding luxury cars is another great conversation piece. What is a timepiece? So most people wear something on their wrist called a watch, but a lot of high net worth individuals will actually refer to this as a timepiece, not a watch. So understanding this terminology is extremely important when having conversations with them so you can relate. So if you walk into a listing presentation and you haven't met this person and you see that they're wearing a Rolex watch or a Gerard Piaget, or there's so many different brands that you should know and you should understand, oh, that's a beautiful timepiece. Is that a classic? It could be a one of a kind. So really doing your research on different watch brands, on different jewelry brands, knowing like certain settings on diamonds, whether it's Tiffany, it's Cartier. These are little things that you can really relate to with them. I remember once one of my dearest friends now, who was a client, it was an internet lead years ago, which I don't really do much internet business, but it was from one of my listings, and I met with her, and I had just got engaged at the time, and she started commenting on my diamond, and next thing you know, her and I are sitting in her apartment, and she takes out like a bag full of diamonds, and we're just talking about that. And because I understood the difference between cuts and clarity and whatnot, we bonded over that, and now she's been a repeat customer of mine for the past 7 years. Other things that you can be knowledgeable about when it comes to selling their homes, or what is in the home. So knowing what different home automation systems are, and understanding that a Lutron system is going to be different from a Crestron home automation system. And what is a Nest system? A lot of them will have that when they leave their homes. They'll have video cameras and whatnot. A Crestron or a Lutron, you can integrate many different things into. You can integrate your shades, you can integrate your lights, your audio, cameras, anything really you can integrate into there. But understanding the difference, because when you go for that listing presentation and you say, oh, this is like top of the line Crestron system, what's integrated into here? And you're up against another broker or listing agent who has no clue what a home automation system even is, you're most likely going to be the one who's going to win that listing because you're more educated and you understand exactly what it is that they have in their home. So other things you can do is, and I always recommend this for even those of you in New Jersey, you can take a little field trip one day once the world opens up again. The Decoration and Design Building, which is where my father used to have our family business, our showroom, is a great place to educate yourself. So if you spend a day and you go in there, you can find out everything from different hardwares. So you need to understand, is there a specific hand cast hardware? There are companies out there like Nan's, S.A. Baxter, that make really high-end doorknobs, cabinet knobs, and a lot of them are hand cast in brass or bronze or white gold. And when you have things of this sort in your home, that's going to bring up the value a bit, and you need to understand these. You should understand what are different types of kitchens. What is a poke and pull kitchen? What is a soft closed drawer? Little details of that sort. What is a galeano appliance? You should know these high-end brands, and a lot of those showrooms, they're actually in the D&D and the A&D building, which is on East 58th Street. The D&D building is actually on 979 3rd Avenue between 58th and 59th. So when we're out of this, it was a great time to go and touch and feel and figure out, what are these different things that are in these high net worth individuals' homes. And that way, when you go in, you know exactly what they are. Another great place to go is Pinterest. I mean, a lot of people, everyone's pretty much still home these days. So sitting and spending some time and understanding, what are different appliances and what value do they have, or what value do they bring, and what's the difference in countertops and stones and whatnot. There's so many different feels and finishes that you should really understand. You should understand lighting, chandeliers. You should understand anything potentially that's in their home. And when oh, wow, that's like a $60,000 range versus, oh, it's a $5,000 range, and you're able to point out the difference, your client's going to be impressed by that. Another thing that I always find interesting to know about is moldings. So knowing different Greek key moldings. I once walked into a listing presentation and there was a ton of dentile molding in there. And I pointed out to my client, oh, wow, you did such a beautiful job on that. And they really appreciated that I noticed the detail. So when people put a lot of money into their homes, they like that you notice that. So the buyer may potentially notice it or may not. But when you're going for that listing and you want to win that listing, it's really important that you understand what your client put into it. I recently put a home into contract where the client put a ton of money into it. They thought they were going to live there forever. There was a lot of brownstone and bluestone, and there were heated floors on the entire level. There was an elevator in the home. And understanding these details, and they had a Crestron system, which automated everything in the home. They had a temperature controlled wine cellar. They had a cinema room in the home, and really understanding how these things work and appreciating what they've put into it is going to help you get that listing as well. So I say educate yourself as much as possible, because the last thing you want to do when you're walking into a listing presentation is say, oh, what a beautiful home. Can you tell me about this? How does this work? If you can actually say to them, oh, wow, I know exactly how this Crestron system works. What do you have integrated into it? You're one step above that other agent who's there for that listing presentation who actually doesn't have that knowledge. And why would you hire somebody who doesn't have knowledge? I would only hire somebody really who's knowledgeable and knows about a specific product. It's almost like you're going into, let's say, a Mercedes dealership, and you say to the guy, like, oh, what's the difference between an AMG or just a regular E-Series? And the salesman says, well, I don't know. You're not going to hire that. You're not going to buy from that person, right? So it's almost like the same type of thing. And that kind of brings you into understanding different cars. So a lot of my high net worth clients have car collections. They have antique car collections. I've always been one that's into cars and loves to know the difference. And I spent time kind of studying the different bodies of them and understanding, like, is this something from the 60s? Is this something from the 70s or 80s? And they love that I have that knowledge too. Other things to really know and to use as conversation pieces are understanding high-end restaurants. So understanding the different awards that restaurants get, whether it's in Europe or it's the United States. I say one of the places that I've met a lot of clients is actually traveling. So traveling and staying at luxury hotels throughout the world, I've just made friends, and those friends have become my clients, or they've known somebody that's coming to or moving from New York that needs to sell a property. And just, being myself and being able to relate on some of these levels has been extremely useful for me. Something else to know in regards to, how to meet high net worth individuals, and a way to do it maybe when you're first starting in the business, if you don't have money to go and stay at luxury resorts, is volunteer for a charity. So most charities have people who are on the boards of those charities are people who are high net worth individuals who are volunteering their time, who may not be working anymore or may have their money working for them. So what better way to meet somebody and give back to your community than volunteer for a charity that you really care about and you're fond of, meet people who are on that board and who are assisting in that charity, and they become your friends, and your friends usually are the first people to refer you. So it's a lot easier than people think. And a lot of times people think, oh, well, because I don't have the amount of money that they do, I can't work for them. And that's so untrue. That's a truly limiting belief. I believe the best thing you could possibly do is just act as if they're the same as you, because at the end of the day, they are. Everyone in the world, no matter how much money or how much money they do have or how much they don't, they're all a person at the end of the day. And if you treat them just like a person, they're going to relate to you. One of the things that I've learned over the years is just being myself is really important, and people respect that. Knowing about financial markets too, especially somewhere that's surrounding New York, in New Jersey where most of you are, and in New York, financial markets drive us. The technology markets also are huge. So understanding what's going on with the stock market and being able to speak that language, and understanding what's going on, obviously having a knowledge of real estate and how is everything that's happening in today's world, whether it's COVID right now or it's another event or something that's happening, be knowledgeable about that, be able to talk about finance, be able to talk about the stock market. That's another really important factor. One thing I find when I'm showing properties sometimes to, let's say, a direct, or somebody comes to an open house of mine, they'll talk about maybe a trip that they're going on, and I maybe happen to travel there in the past years, and I'll say, oh, that's a beautiful hotel that you stayed at, I've been there. And being able to relate is, they appreciate that, and that gives us something to talk about, and that kind of puts us on that same level as well. So you don't necessarily have to have been to those hotels, but maybe you know about them. Do a little bit of research. Look at their Instagram pages or Facebook pages prior to going to meet with them. And that way you can get an idea. So if you saw somebody was in the south of France last summer and they stayed in Cap Ferrat at the Grand Hotel du Cap, do your research. Take a look around at the property. There's always virtual tours. You can find out a ton of information online. So you may necessarily, you possibly could go into that listing presentation and you could say, or bring up the south of France, like, oh, I was thinking about going to the south of France this summer. And they may say, oh, I was there last summer at Grand Hotel du Cap. And like, oh, I was just researching that property. It looks so spectacular. Tell me about it. And that's another way just to relate and be on the same level as them. So anything that you could possibly do really to educate yourselves and understand terms that they speak in. So some of the most important ones, as I mentioned, are understanding what a family office is, calling a watch a timepiece versus just a watch, and understanding why you call it that. Because really high-end watches, as they call timepieces, there's a ton of mechanisms that go into them. So if you spend a little bit of time on any big watchmaker's website, you'll see the amount of mechanisms actually that do go into them. Or when stores open up again, you can actually go into the store and you can ask a salesperson questions. And there's certain watches out there, limited edition and special collections, where there could be thousands of mechanisms, and the mechanisms actually determine the price on some of them. So understanding a little bit of that and understanding that world is important. But I say, the biggest piece of advice that I can give is just be real and understand, what they're interested in. Because if you have the same interests as these high net worth individuals that you're trying to sell to, you understand the love they put into their homes or their investment property and what's important to them. You're relating to them and they're going to trust you. And people always want to work with people that they know and trust at the end of the day. So I'm going to open it up to questions. That's just kind of a rough introduction to, where do you find them? How do you meet them? What do you need to know to be in their world? So I'd say boats.
Конечно.
I would get to the bag of rocks.
I think we're.
То есть это реально вопрос вот приоритетов, и оно вроде как есть, но нет. Да, я вернусь к своим этим.
Nicole, 1 second. Let me try to.
А ты мне пошли пример того, что ты делаешь. Я хоть посмотрю.
Okay, I think that worked.
Flowers look so pretty today.
That was a ridiculous amount of good information. I was taking notes fast and furiously. So many things that you said, they seem like such common sense that I just never thought of. And you really just did a nice job of breaking it up. I mean, you're right. Not everybody feels maybe they themselves is in that top 1%, but how hard is it to research the places where your clients are vacationing? Not at all, right? How hard is it to hang out in a lobby bar, if that's hotel lobby bar, if that's something you'd like? I don't know, go figure. That's not so hard. So those are great things. Yeah, does anybody, I tried unmuting everybody and it was noisy. So please just unmute yourselves when you have a question and jump in.
Hi, Nicole. Can I ask a question? It's Michelle.
Hi, Michelle. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing well, thank you.
Could you talk a little bit about the negotiation process and how it might be a little bit different with a high net worth person? And if you have like a married couple, how you deal with the different personalities?
Absolutely. So one of the first things I do, no matter what, before I even meet a potential client, is I try to figure out where they are on the DISC personality spectrum. So within the first 30 seconds of me walking in their door, I figure out, based on the way they greet me, based on the way, do they ask me to sit down? Do they ask me to, or do they ask if I want to tour first, where they are on that spectrum? So I go into, as far as the negotiations go, I usually make it short and sweet. Some of them are tougher, some of them are easier. So if they're investors, it's all about the numbers at the end of the day. If there's a couple, let's say, I try to figure out who's the decision maker in that process, and they're the ones that I will really gear the negotiation toward. I recently dealt with a couple where it was a great deal, and it took me weeks to actually convince the husband that this was a great deal and he should take this. And if he just if he keeps going, and we're in the middle of this COVID, like, he's going to lose this deal. So stop, putting your ego in front of this and understand you need to take this deal. I said to him, then I was about the 8th broker on this listing. I said, how many offers have you had? And he said to me, I wouldn't be talking to you if I had any. So I said, okay, so here we are. We had a great offer. Now the offers come down because the buyer's from a different country and you've waited over a month now and their currency has come down. So do you want to wait and have the offer come down more because the market has come down in this specific area? Or do you want to actually take this and move forward? And he's like, well, can you cut your commission? I said, no, I don't cut my commission. I said, the other broker on the other side actually did. I said, I'm not a discount broker. I'm not going to cut my commission. I said, at the end of the day, I said, I've worked really hard on this. I spent a ton of money on advertising and marketing. And I went, I really did an amazing video on this property. I spent hours. I had my team calling around this. I said, absolutely not. And I stayed hard. And another month went by before he decided to just recently, a couple of days ago, take the offer. But when it comes to negotiation, I won't cave at all. And it doesn't really matter. And to me, at the end of the day, my job is to get them the most amounts of money, but not at the expense of the work that I put in. And I've said this to clients before, and some people will be okay with it, some people won't. But I said, you go to work every day. I said, you run a business, right? He said, yeah. I said, and you make money at the end of the day, right? Yes. I said, are you going to wake up every day and go to work to not make money? He said, no. I said, so why should I do the same thing? And he understood it.
That's great. I love that.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a really
Thank
good
you.
one. That's a really good one, because I think we see that all the time. And
Yeah, I mean, really turning it around and putting it on them, and whether, depending on what business they are in. This particular client I know runs a lot of big businesses and is on the board of them and whatnot. And it was basically like, okay, you're not working for free, so why would I? You know, I'm here. You hired me for a reason. It's to get your home sold and to get you the most amount of money. And that's what I did. So I'm not gonna, you know, take money out of my own pocket to make you feel better or to boost your ego. It's just not who I am. And you wouldn't have hired me if that was who I am. So just really keeping firm, as hard as it was, especially in this market. We're like, oh my God, a deal's happening. You want it to happen. But just holding your ground and staying firm. And he had this client to come back to, goes, well, when's the exclusive over? You know, it's over in another 2 months. So if you don't sell it and I don't take this offer, I'll just hire another broker. I said, well, I wish you the best of luck with that. But here I am. I have a live buyer at the table, and this is a great offer. You should take it. So, you know, he tried to scare me into saying like, oh, well, you probably need this more than I do right now. And I just said, no, I'm holding firm. Here's an offer. Sit with it. And then I actually figured out that the wife had a little influence on him, and a friend who actually introduced me to them had some influence as well. So I called the friend and I actually said, can you do me a favor? Just have a conversation with the wife he had a really good relationship with. And then we kind of got to a point where I knew it wasn't good to get him involved anymore, the friend. And he said, well, let me call him. I said, no. I said, give me 48 hours. Don't talk to him. And he finally accepted the offer. So it's just a matter of really reading them and understanding like who's the decision maker, how to push their buttons, and when you really need to stay firm, because they'll respect you more that way.
Nicole, I have a question. Hi, it's Kristen from Philadelphia. Hi, it's been forever. I miss you.
I know, I miss you too.
Thanks for speaking. So I know you have a team, and I know you have a strong luxury following and strong luxury business. How do you benefit your team members and train your team members to know luxury like you do? Like, what are your top 3 lessons for your team members as they get into luxury?
Great question. So thank you for asking that. I love your earrings, by the way. So I'd say my top, or number 1, having them come and I mentor them. So I'll have them shadow me on luxury listings. So whether it's me going to a listing presentation or watching me show that listing, and I'll point out all those details. So a lot of times I'll do it even at the photo shoot. If I am there, I'll point out, okay, well, I usually will appoint 1 team member on my team for a specific listing. So I will make sure that I show them every single detail, and this is a home automation system, and this is how it works, and you can operate it from your phone. And this is a dead peel molding, or this is a plug and pull kitchen, this is a galeano appliance, this is a Fisher and Paykel. I'll make sure I point out all those details, and I'll also type it up on a sheet. So it's like they have a cheat sheet with them if they're showing it and I'm not, to really explain to them. And I tell them, like, these are the really important points when you're showing this unit, what you have to point out. Point out that you have a custom made window treatment, or you can just press the button and they go up, or you can speak to them, or if there's an awning on a terrace, like it's wind or sun censored. And I really make sure that I just try to show them as much as possible. I don't care how repetitive I am, I'll point it out 50 times until they really know it. And then I'll also ask them to, I'll also ask them to then show me the apartment as if it was as if I was the client. So what I'll do is I'll say, okay, now pretend I'm the client and you're giving me a tour. and they'll go through that tour, and then I'll give them pointers as to here's what you could have said about this particular part of the property to make it look better. So I'd say that's really my biggest strong point. And I'll bring up little things like at meetings, like, oh, do you guys know what a restaurant is? Or do you know what a timepiece is? Or I'll just kind of at times like throw little tidbits of information in there to educate them and make sure that they really know what they're talking about. Because if they don't, it's not going to be good and they're not going to sell that property. So
Awesome. Thank you.
that answered your question. You're welcome. Anyone else? All right, we have a quiet group today.
Nicole, I have a question from a marketing perspective. Talk about what you do. I mean, probably most of what you do is considered luxury. What things do you feel need to be done differently marketing wise for luxury than a traditional?
So I think it's more important than ever to have a video, especially in New York. We have a lot of international buyers. And you guys probably have a lot of that in New Jersey as well. So I think it's extremely important to make sure that you have a really high-end video and you have something that's really going to showcase the important features in the home. I think it's important to get it in front of other luxury brokers too. I'd recently partnered with a broker actually in Tenafly on a home there, and this beautiful, beautiful home that we just got into contract. And I probably spent more money than ever in the marketing on that. And a lot of it was just making sure that we had the most amazing video. We had its own website. So it created its own website for it, which was 10nelsonplace.com, which was really, really amazing if you guys want to check that out. It really came out beautiful, and it really just put the home into a light of, I mean, I had 2 people on my team actually dress up as tennis players and go out on the tennis court and have a little match, and it showed the lifestyle. And it didn't just show the home. It was like, okay, here we're getting ready for a tennis match, and now we're going to go out and play, and look how fun this could be. So we really made sure to just show those details. I personally sat in the theater and I put my feet up and showed like how the chairs recline. And a lot of what I did there was I spoke to and I reached out to luxury brokers in big cities. So I reached out to a lot of luxury brokers in Beverly Hills and LA and Miami, Dallas and Houston, and places or Chicago where I thought the buyer might come from, and let them know I had to put this on their radar so that they could potentially send me a buyer. And we did the normal, send mailings to the neighborhood and do brokers opens and whatnot. But I don't find that that's the most effective. I really thought the buyer was going to come from somewhere else for this home, which they did. They actually came from South Korea. And it was more just about getting that out there on my channels and social media that helped find the buyer.
I know one of the things that is in your bio on your website is that you really do have clients from all over the world.
Yeah.
What advice would you give people other than hotel lobbies to really try to strengthen that worldwide network?
So that's a great question as well. One of the ways that I've actually gotten that international clientele is through clients who have moved or clients who have moved here. So having some of those listings has helped. I've had several Chinese buyers that I've actually got because they've come direct to luxury listings that I've had. I've also had I've actually worked with a lot of Indian clients, and it was basically like I had one of them that had come to one of my listings, and that one introduced me to the next, and that one introduced me to the next. So a lot of networking too. I've had financial advisors introduce me to clients who are moving here. I have a friend who actually owns a hedge fund and had just recently introduced me to a friend of his who was moving their whole bank from like Switzerland to New York and needed housing for them. I've kind of my own network in a way. I've studied abroad and I've spent some time abroad, so I've made connections that way. LinkedIn's a really great tool, but in social media. So I have a client who I've known since like literally my brother was in kindergarten, his mother was actually lived in China and reached out to me one day and said, my son said you're the best broker, and that was through social media. So a lot of it has really just been through my own personal network and calling through and introductions. Some clients I have right now that are moving here are actually from Turkey. And I actually met them through another Keller Williams broker. So building relationships with different brokers in different countries is really useful too. I mean, besides Keller Williams, we're global, we're international, we're in, I believe, over 50 countries now. Use that network that you have. Use your relationships with London, with Dubai. I have key brokers in all of those cities that I talk to and keep up with and build relationships with that will send me clients. And that's a really great way to build your global network and work with international investors. Some I've met through, my late husband was in global prime brokerage, so I was part of his network as well. So it's basically just building relationships and building relationships on top of those relationships.
And you know what else I'm hearing as you talk? Elementary, dear Watson. When you meet people, get them in your database, right? It just happens that you're meeting someone and hearing they live in China or in Portugal or wherever it is, and not assuming, oh, they're not a client. You're saying, oh, I need to get that person in my database and touch them. Absolutely. Just like your past clients.
And you know what? A lot of it too is going back to basics. I've been spending the last couple of weeks, I've been down in Florida, and I had a conversation with my mom, and she said to me, you know, I just spoke to so-and-so who we grew up with, like where I lived when I was in elementary school. And I heard this one's moving to Florida and that one is. And so I started calling people I grew up with and saying like, hey, how are you? And like, how are your parents doing? And are they making any moves? And I sent out many referrals actually in the past couple of weeks, just based on calling people, like even expanded. I didn't even have in my database, but I had on Facebook, or I had their number in my phone, and they were like so happy to speak to me and just hear from me. And I probably haven't talked to them in 20 years, but it turned into hour conversations, and those hour conversations turned into referrals. So why not? I mean, use the network that we have. We have over 180,000 agents. Build those relationships, and those relationships in turn will bring you more clients. I promise you that. If you keep up with them and you're in front of them and you truly care, and you build some of the best friendships that you'll ever have too. And again, one thing I always believe is that people want to give business to people they like, love, and trust. And if people like and trust you, they're going to want to give you that business. So I can't stress more relationships, and network. That was always a huge thing that I've done in my life. When, especially my first year in real estate, I networked like crazy. I literally was at like 3 networking events every morning and 2 or 3 at night, or I'd go to a random happy hour, or I'd get involved in something that interests me, just to meet so many people. So it got to the point where I had so many people, I couldn't keep up with them all and keep up with the business. So I had to tone down the coffee meetings. But it was more about just really getting to know people and understanding who they genuinely are. So being myself really, and just coming from that place of genuinity, and you know, not being anyone different because somebody has more money than I do. You know, realizing that everybody's a person at the end of the day, and just understanding how to speak their language. I have also realized that a lot of my wealthiest clients are the most down to earth. So just because somebody is extremely wealthy doesn't mean they're going to wear name brands necessarily. A lot of times they're really wealthy because they don't, and they just really know how to manage their money well, and they understand that. And a lot of them are friends. I mean, I have a client who's probably in his late 70s, nicest guy, probably on paper, because I see everyone's financials, like one of the wealthiest clients I have. Most down to earth, laid back guy. He'll text me and ask me like how to send a Bitmoji, and he's like so happy when I tell him how to send a Bitmoji, and I laugh at it because it's so cute. He'll text me about like technology and whatnot, and I'm not exactly like the best with technology, but it's like he looks at me as his guide for little things. And I always say, like, to my clients and people I meet, like, we truly are concierge, and we help people with any little thing that they need, even if it is figuring out how to make themselves look like a Bitmoji. So it's just really, you know, being a person and having those genuine relationships with people.
Hey,
Nicole,
can you
I
go in
ask-
Go ahead, Michelle.
Oh, that's okay. You go ahead. I'll go after. Thank you.
Great, thanks. Nicole, it's Barbara, and I just got off the phone with a client who has a 600 square foot apartment in Manhattan and has been staying with her family in Scotch Plains. So can you speak to that a little bit, to what you're seeing in terms of people maybe expressing concern about living in the city, and if you're seeing listings coming up?
Yeah, absolutely. So great question, because we are seeing a lot of movement. I've seen a lot of my clients have second homes. So a lot of them are at their second homes, whether they're in the Hamptons or they're in Connecticut or they're in New Jersey or they're in Florida, and they've been kind of camping out there while this is happening. Some of them are deciding that they do want to give the suburbs a try. and they don't want to live in a city that's so dense. Some people are seeing that they, they really don't want to live on top of each other. However, just like anything, the way that I see it is I believe that I also have about like 6 buyers right now who are waiting for me to get them into properties and can't wait to pull the trigger as soon as I can show them property. They're getting antsy. People love New York. New York City is always, Manhattan is always going to be Manhattan. It's always going to have life, not even at the moment as much life, but it's going to go back to some sort of new normal. And it's always going to have the energy. It's going to be the cultural capital of the world. You're not going to be able to go to a Broadway show or go to Lincoln Center if you're in a suburb, and just decide an hour before that you want to go and get tickets. Or in Manhattan, you can do that. You're always going to do that. Yes, I'm seeing a lot of people who are kind of temporarily out there, but I think a lot of them are starting to get antsy and bored too. And they're realizing that they kind of miss that vibe and they miss that energy. So I think we are going to see some of that. We are going to see some people that want to leave for a bit, but I think they will end up coming back. I see it, this will be like the V curve, because there are a ton of people who are waiting to list their properties and a ton of people who are waiting to buy properties. Just before we went into this whole time is usually our busiest time of year, our spring market. And that I believe is going to be pushed back. So I think our 3rd and 4th quarter are going to be extremely busy. I think there are going to be a lot of properties that do come on. We were just coming into a time where we had a ton of inventory and that inventory level was dropping. And we were finally coming to some sort of balance. It really was a buyer's market. And then all of a sudden this happens. And I have a couple listings that were signed just like the day or two before the mayor said you cannot show properties, and all these buildings shut down, and I can't even get in there to list their properties or do a virtual tour because the buildings will not allow us in. So, I think we're going to see, depending on how long we're in this and when we're able to go back to some sort of new normal, will really determine what's going to happen. But yes, there are plenty of people who are renting in the suburbs and kind of checking out and want to see what happens. I think there are going to be people who weren't thinking of selling before but are going to sell now. With that said, though, any deals that have actually happened over the past 2 months since we've been in this haven't been going for really less than 3 to 5% below the asking price. You do see your one-off where somebody is maybe desperate to sell and they're taking 25% off of that price. But most sellers, if they don't need to sell, they're not going to take a discount right now. So, I really think it's going to depend on, again, how long we're in this and where people's minds are at that point. But I am, during this, seeing a lot of people go to their country homes or decide that they want to maybe rent out their homes in Manhattan and give the suburbs a try for a little bit. I'm seeing that more with clients with younger children, because they're realizing their space is too small in Manhattan and they need more space, especially since they're home all the time and they're working from home and raising kids. But I do have a lot of buyers right now I'm working with who are purchasing for their children who are just graduating college and will be starting their first jobs, and they want to be in Manhattan. So I think there's going to be different things that happen in different parts of the market once we're able to go back to that new norm. A great question, Barb. And
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I was wondering, Nicole, what kind of closing gifts do you give your clients?
Great question. So it depends on who they are, of course. One thing, and the price point. One thing I did a lot in the past was a Tiffany clock for really high-end listings. I'd say probably like 4 million and up. I did a nice Tiffany clock if they were an investor, let's say, or I've done a Tiffany keychains. I've done nice Tiffany bowls, actually, that have the Nicole Gary team engraved on the bottom. To specific clients, I've done like a nice dinner party for. So one of my very dear friends who I sold a beautiful home to last year, my gift to them was when they were going to do some renovating and whatnot, like, when you guys are all settled and you're all moved in, I want to throw you a dinner party, because I wanted them to have more of an experience. So it really depends, again, who they are, what type of relationship I have with them, and what I think they'll like. One of my high net worth clients who are not into anything material, what I did for them is I actually donated money to a charity that they were really involved in, and they loved that. That was like the best gift I could potentially give them. So again, really, broaden the spectrum based on what type of relationship and what I think will be most important to them. So sometimes donating to a charity versus giving them something because they don't need something of value is the best possible present you can give them. Or just an experience them I'll take out to a nice dinner, I'll take to a show and get to spend some time with them. I'm a big relationship person, Michelle, always have been. I always say if my clients are not my friends prior to the transaction, they will be my friends after. So it's important for me to keep up those relationships, and that's how they remember you.
That's awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
How do you, as far as like getting your past clients together to kind of like mingle with each other, so hopefully maybe they're talking about you, you know, in the good way, like how do you do like smaller events or get people together?
So in the past, I've done client appreciation parties. So really good question, Nick. And it's funny, I find that in New York, because people's schedules are so busy and they have so much going on, less people actually come than I think in the suburbs, because they just have so much on their calendar already. But I'd say a great client appreciation party I had was actually at the Galeano Wolf showroom. So it was a collaboration with them. There's a showroom in the A&D building that literally you can't even buy anything there. It's just like a showroom. Literally it's there so you can like play and touch and feel. And I teamed up with them. So they actually paid for the entire event, which was amazing, all the catering. And because I brought my clients into their space. And these clients are people who either own homes or bought homes and could potentially now buy their appliances because of it. I probably had I think I invited about 300 people and we had about 40 show up, which isn't terrible. Yeah. But yeah, and it was a nice space and it was a nice evening and we had cocktails and we had little appetizers flowing and they got to the experience. And I also teamed up with the showroom that they did it, like the Galeano Wolf showroom. They actually did a little, speech on like what they have to offer, which was great. Something else I've done in the past is I've teamed up with developers. I actually did this probably about 2 years ago now. I teamed up with a developer who had a beautiful new building. It was overlooking Central Park. It was a whole floor. And another client of mine who is in hedge funds who runs something called Battle of the Quants. And he has this educational kind of like panel every year, and he needed a space to have a party prior to this event. It was kind of like a kickoff party. Now, all the people who came run hedge funds, have something to do with hedge fund technology. So I thought this was a really great collaboration. So I had a relationship with the developer. I got him this space to throw the party. He had to pay for all the cocktails, hors d'oeuvres and whatnot, but he didn't have to pay for the space. Everyone was so impressed there because they're in this over 7,000 square foot apartment overlooking Central Park on the 80 something floor, which was stunning. And I got to meet all of his clients. So in turn, I built all these great relationships and I've helped the developer find a potential buyer for that particular building and that particular listing. And I've gotten many people in one room that I wouldn't necessarily have gotten prior, and I was able to really build sort of small relationships with each one of them. And I had my whole team there. Everyone was dressed. We tried to mingle with as many of them as we could. From that, actually, I've gotten probably in the last 2 years about 5 pieces of business. And there's also relationships that I've built which will potentially turn into business in the future. So a really great question.
Michelle, I have another fun question for you. It's Barbara.
Barbara.
Again.
Sure. Go ahead.
So what happens when you sell luxury $4 million properties and then you get a phone call on Tuesday to go down to, I don't know, 48th Street and 7th Avenue, and it's really not your cup of tea? I'm very curious how you handle properties that don't quite hit the luxury band.
I don't have any limits. I always tell my team there is never a client that is too small for us. We treat every single client exactly the same. I don't care if it's a $2,000 a month renter or it's a $20 million penthouse buyer. Everyone's treated the same. We care about them all. They're all equal. You never know where the next referral is going to come from. We're going to put the same time, the same energy, and the same love into their listing as we would into a $20 million penthouse. I had a client my first year of real estate when I was starting out. I had no money. I was doing some rentals to survive. And they were 3 girls who had a $2,000 budget. It's almost impossible in Manhattan. And I ran around the city. I remember it was like July. I was running up and down 6-story walk-ups, sweating, wishing I was on the beach. And I did well by them. And at the time, I was like, great, I closed a rental. I kept up the relationship. It turns out one of the girls had a trust fund, and a couple years later called me to sell her a $5 million apartment. I remember actually about 2 years ago, I had a referral client, also around a $2,000 budget. One of the agents on my team handled it really well. It turned out it was the nicest girl, and I always make sure to touch base with them and see how everything's going along the way. And she's now referred me 5 clients who have bought from me. So there's never something that's too small for us at all. It doesn't matter if you're selling luxury properties, you know, in different times you have to shift your models anyway, and you're always going to need those smaller deals as your bread and butter, as they usually move faster when the luxury market shifts. So it's important to stay and have some sort of balance.
Yeah, the ones I struggle with are the renovations that aren't quite up to, you know, the quality that I'd like to represent, and yet you're asked to represent them. That's one of my challenges.
What you do is really market them in the right light. So if it's something that needs a renovation, then be creative about it. So maybe you virtually stage it and you put more money into it, but it's still going to show your brand and your value. And it could be, I had a listing once that needed a complete gut renovation. It was a 4-bedroom, 4.5 bedroom, bath apartment. It was probably the hardest listing I ever had to sell. It was the longest listing I ever had. And I'm really grateful that my clients stuck with me the whole time and re-signed. And they didn't take my suggestion from day one about pricing. The market was coming down a bit, and they didn't take my suggestion about staging. Originally, it looked terrible. It had wall-to-wall carpet that was disgusting and hadn't been touched since 1980. I was almost embarrassed to put it on the market, but I virtually staged it. I teamed up with a design build firm who actually did renderings, and they did the renderings so that I can put those renderings on my marketing and I could put those on the website. This is what it could look like. They also priced it out to, they did a mid-range, a high-end, and a luxury renovation, and what each room would cost to renovate. They broke it down to appliances, they broke it down to brands, and that really helped to keep that brand there. So I had on the website, you always have to have the actual photos of what it looks like, but also here's a virtual rendering of what this will look like once the work is done. And that marketing actually got it sold. One of the first things that I kept begging them, could please take out this wall-to-wall carpet. I just, gave them feedback from the first couple showings, and finally they agreed to take it out. And then there was these gorgeous teak herringbone floors underneath, and it just showed so much better. So it's a great question. Yes, you want to keep your brand, but there's things that you can do, and you could spend more money on marketing those types of listings to make them look good.
Okay.
And
Actually, just
right.
emailed Keelan about the 1209 yesterday.
Sorry, what was that?
Oh my God, I didn't know it was me. Oh, I'm sorry about that.
That was just an oops, it sounds like.
Okay.
Does anybody else have questions for Nicole? All good, Christina, no worries. All right, well, really, thank you so much. This was really invaluable. I just can't wait for the real world so you can come here and, meet people in person in our office. And, I was on the phone even with one of our agents this morning, Susie, who I think you've connected with. She mentioned to me she's working on yet another referral for you.
Yeah,
so
we're working together on that. And for any of you who do have Manhattan referral business, I'd love to work with you. My contact information, so you have it, is my email is Nicole, Nicole, at thenicolegaryteam.com. Gary spelled Gary. On Instagram, I'm at Nicole Gary NYC, or my team page is Nicole Gary Team. And I'm on Facebook as well. You can find me under Nicole Gary, or I have a team page, the Nicole Gary Team. So love to connect with you all on social media and work with you on your referrals.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Well, thanks, guys.
thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Bye-bye.
Bye.